All righty, everyone. Looks like we got a good group of folks already joined in here, so we're going to go ahead and get started. If this is your very first webinar, would love if you just drop a note in the comments of where you're coming from. Would love to see where we're covered here in the United States and outside as well. I'm your host, Ryan O'Donnell. I'm the founder and CEO of Employ Us, a company that Hireology acquired earlier this summer to help their customers automate and scale up their employee referral programs. Today, we're going to be covering a topic that is near and dear to my heart, and that is how to measure the effectiveness of your employee referral program. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get started here. Looks like we've got our first person who commented in from Louisville, Kentucky, my hometown. I got a lot of family there, so awesome. Thanks for joining. To go ahead and get us started here, if you have joined any of our webinars over the past few months, you've probably heard me talk about this already. But one thing that the data is really clear about is that referred applicants are more qualified, referred candidates are hired faster, and referred employees stay employed longer. So we've kind of seen this time and time again. The stats are really clear that referrals are some of your best employees, and everything that's happened over the past almost 2 years have really shown that, only relying on a few sources for your talent pipeline isn't enough. And referrals, being one of the best sources, often tend to be one of the least utilized. So over this past few months, we've had several of these webinars talking about how do you create a referral program from scratch, how do you promote it, how do you engage and reward employees. And today we're going to talk about how do you actually measure its effectiveness. Now, one thing that we do know is that referrals tend to be about 4 times more likely to get hired than candidates that that apply through other sources like Indeed, your career site, career fairs, things of that nature. So one common question that a lot of people will ask me is, well, how do I know if my referral program is working? We all love referrals. We want to get more referrals, but the question is, how do you actually get more referrals and see your referral program steadily improving, month over month? So that's really what we're going to focus on today. If you haven't already seen some of the previous webinars, I encourage you to go back and look at them. That's where we talked about how to define your policy, how to set the right bonus, how to promote it, really lay the groundwork. What we're going to spend about the next 10, 15 minutes on is really a couple of topics around how do you measure the right things to get the most out of your referral program. We're going to look at your referral metrics. So in the actual pipeline of how many referrals get hired. We're going to look at your participation metrics. So that's all around employee engagement. And then we're going to look at your sourcing metrics to determine how you're actually getting your referrals, what sources are working the best. So we're going to go ahead and dive right on in here. The first group of metrics we want to talk about are your referral metrics. These are often the most common ones that companies are already tracking. What we often hear from companies is they know generally what % of their hires come from referrals. For some companies, they might be early in their process of rolling out a referral program, and that might be anywhere between 5 to 10% of all of their hires coming in from employee referrals. For more mature referral programs, you might see that number climb in the 20s, 30s. I've even seen in some companies in the 40s, 50s, and beyond. But that is really one of the most common metrics that people will talk about when they talk about their referral program. They know that 20 to 30% is a good benchmark, and everyone wants to either be getting there or surpassing that amount. What we're going to talk about is really all the things that lead up into that number. Specifically, how many referrals are you actually generating? What does that breakdown look like on a different type of role? The referral to candidate conversion ratio, and then your referral to hire ratio. So all of these things can be nuanced and slightly different for each organization. But when we look at targeting a goal of, say, 30% of our hires from referrals, it's important to do the math backwards and look at how many referrals do we actually need to receive over the next, say, 12 months in order to hit that goal. I was just talking with a company, they want to go from 20% of their hires to 30% in 2022. For them, they need to hire about 150 referrals to hit that goal. They looked at their total hires. It's about 150. And what they are able to do is literally just work the math backwards and see that, on average, about 50% of their referrals convert into candidates. And they hire about 1 out of every 4 candidates that come in from their referral program. So then they just do the math backwards to figure out exactly how many referrals do they need to get over the next 12 months in order to hit their goals. It is really, that simple. What we've seen for a lot of companies is that they start to do this as kind of a company-wide goal, but then it can be really helpful to break that down into different departments or job classifications. So you might find, for example, that some areas of the business, you're able to convert referrals to hires at a much higher rate than you would in other departments or with other job types. So we definitely see that variation. So the more granular you can get, the better. But with this, really what we'll typically see is that if you have a referral program where you've got about 1 out of every 4 candidates getting hired, the cost of actually getting those candidates is usually about 1/4 that of what you would find on a traditional job board. When it comes to actually tracking those metrics, if you are using Employus, those are all things that you can track in real time. And you can see exactly how many referrals you're generating month over month, week over week. You can see the breakdown in terms of how many of those referrals are actually interested, how many of those referrals are ultimately getting hired and moving through the hiring process as well. The next thing we're going to talk about is all about employee participation and figuring out how do we actually get our employees referring their friends and sharing our open jobs. So for starters, the big participation metrics that we're going to be looking at are overall employee participation. And we can break that down by different teams as well as different locations, branches. If you're a franchised organization, you could look at different franchises. If you're a branch-based kind of organization, you could look at it by branch or state or region. But basically what we're looking at here is what % of our employees are participating in our referral program. And you can look at that in a couple of different ways. The first thing that I like to look at is what % of our employees have been invited to our referral program. A lot of times the referral programs are just kind of put out there, but there aren't direct and targeted asks to employees. So you have a lot of employees who have never had a direct ask, have never been told directly what the referral program is and how they can participate. Then you want to look at how many employees have submitted at least one referral and how many employees have submitted at least a referral who has gotten hired. And at each of those metrics, you want to be able to break those down so you can see exactly who are your most engaged promoters. Those are the ones that you might go to continuously, month over month, the ones who are going to consistently refer the best people. But then also, you usually have a lot of employees who have not yet sent in their first referral, and you can target those with more unique campaigns, which I'll talk about next. The other metric you want to look at is your referrals per employee. This is a really simple metric to pull if you're using some sort of software, like Employus or others, that will help you figure out exactly how engaged are your promoters. Are most of your employees submitting one person and then they don't submit again? That might be a sign that the referral program isn't working well for them. Maybe referrals are falling through the cracks. The other thing is, if you have a high number of referrals per employee, you might want to look at that so that it's not too high, because you don't want to run into quality issues where people are referring anyone and everyone, and thus the referral program might be losing some of its benefits. The last thing is really looking at a participation leaderboard. These are really successful in companies being able to show which employees are, top 10 at the organization in terms of their participation. That's where you're going to be looking at some of your most active employees. We've got some companies where over an employee's tenure, they might be referring 50, 60, 100 people over several years and generating a lot of hires over that period of time. So that's a great way to build some social proof, to know the program's working well, and show other employees those same participation metrics that you're looking at internally as well. Now, the other thing that we'll look at as well here, when it comes time for actually evaluating program effectiveness with the employees, using tools like Employus, you can break that down so that's all visible in real time. So you can see, for example, the sales department, what does that look like? How does that benchmark compared to, marketing or engineering? You can look at that on a per location level and see adoption rates. You can also look at overall at the organization and see which groups are the most successful and participating in the program. One thing that we'll also commonly find companies doing is comparing different groups and figuring out what works well in some organizations or some departments. Maybe it's a manager that's really active in promoting for referrals. Maybe it's a GM who every week tells their employees to refer. That can give you some really interesting insights into what's working well out there in the field. Now, the last category we're going to talk about are your sourcing metrics. And, unlike the sourcing that you might think about when you're, sourcing candidates to apply on your careers page, what we're talking about when it comes to sourcing for an employee referral program are really, how are you getting your referrals? So what channels are working best? Are you a company where you have to promote the program directly? Are employees coming to you? Are you engaging them with email or text campaigns? That's really what we're looking at here. So the big sources that are really the most common are those like email and text campaigns. You can create custom links or flyers or QR codes. A lot of companies will just have a manual inbox if they're not using a tool where they're having employees submit referrals, to employee referrals, company career page email address. And each of those are your different sources for how you can actually get referrals. You might have unique landing pages if you've got kind of a robust recruiting tool where you're soliciting for referrals in a lot of different places. I've seen some companies do referral-a-thons where they'll encourage employees to refer at company events, have like an iPad set up, and they'll track to see how many referrals are coming in from events like that as well. The big thing that you're going to want to look at is, for each of these campaigns, where are the referrals actually coming from? Are they coming from, example, from more SMS campaigns or email campaigns? Are there particular times of the day when your referrals are most likely to happen? We've found that Monday morning is one of the best times to tell employees to refer their friends, because their friends are the most likely to actually apply for a job first thing Monday morning. We can all speculate as to why that might be, but you can test that out and you can figure out when is the right time to send out a campaign, when is the right time to promote your program. And then again, you can get stats on all of that. If you're already using Employus, you can see exactly how many campaigns you're sending out and the impact of those. So, we'll often talk about with companies, the easiest way to get more referrals is to just ask. So you could spin up an email campaign or a flyer, send it out in, some organizations are heavy Slack or Teams users, and just set up like a weekly reminder to the whole company to, click a link and submit a referral. Those links are all trackable, so you can see exactly how many employees click on it, how many referrals actually come in, and even get so far as to say how many people ultimately got hired because of that campaign. So obviously, the more campaigns you do, the more results you'll be able to see. and that'll just really help drive up the referral program adoption among those employees. This is also a great way if you do have, custom flyers or links, you can create those and see which channels are working. One of the best parts is if it's really easy to spin those up, you can test and you can figure out what things work best from, different types of campaigns, whether it be, social first, where you're posting on, LinkedIn asking for referrals, or it might be in an onboarding campaign where you're targeting new employees asking for those. That's really just a small glimpse of all the number of different ways that you can promote the program and then measure your impact and see which campaigns are actually producing the best results. So just to summarize here, there's a lot of different things you can do to track your referral program's effectiveness. What I would encourage everyone to do is, take a look at the metric that you're using today. A lot of companies, that is what % of our hires come in from referrals. And I would challenge you for 2022, as you're looking at that and trying to determine, are we trying to get to 15%, 25, 30, 40%? Set that goal and then do the math backwards to figure out how many referrals would you actually need to get in order to hit that goal. And then you can look at how many referrals do you get from each employee, and then determine how many employees need to participate in your referral program. Getting those stats is really important way for you to track exactly how your referral program is performing today, but also how you can move the needle on it over time. So that's just a quick way to wrap up our last webinar of the year here. If you haven't already heard, if you are interested in being able to use Employ Us, we are offering off 50% off the cost of the program for the first 6 months. It's a really great way to get started tracking your referral program and making this a reliable source of candidates for you in 2022. Some restrictions do apply. If you're an existing customer and you want to take advantage of the sale, it does expire at the end of this year. So you've just got a couple weeks left. So go ahead and contact your customer success manager if that's something you're interested in. If you're not currently using Hireology, feel free to visit this URL and learn more. And we'll be happy to follow up with you over these next few days to get you set up so you can take full advantage of this offer. I'm going to stick around for another minute or two. If anyone's got any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. I see we've got one here about some previous videos around setting a referral bonus. We do have some links on the website we'll be emailing out at the end of this presentation that will also link to our previous sessions as well. So if you've got any questions, feel free to check that out as well. Like I said, I'll stick around here for another minute. If anyone's got any questions, feel free to post them in the chat. If anyone has any metrics that they're curious about in terms of good benchmarks, or if they're curious about what types of metrics they should be tracking at their organization, more than happy to give some feedback here live. Like I said, I'll stick around for a minute or two to see if there's anything else that we can help y'all with. Got one question about some benchmarks from Natalia. Nice to meet you. Thanks for the question here. One of the things that we'll see about a common benchmark for referral programs, if you take a goal of about 40% engagement in your referral program, then that's a really good starting place for you to track against. So you might have 10% today. What would it look like if you were to increase that to 40% of your employees submitting at least one referral? That's a good target metric that we'll look at for a company after they've been using a product like Employ Us for about their first 6 to 12 months, is just figuring out how many employees need to participate. And then the other thing that we'll look at is what % of those referrals ultimately get hired. For a typical organization, it's really around anywhere between 1 out of every 4 to 1 out of every 10 referrals getting hired. If you've got a situation where you've got a lot of employees who are referring people who aren't good quality, and that number is getting up to 15 or 20, then you might have some concerns and might want to give some more guidance to employees of who they should be referring. Got a couple other questions here. One from Ruth: struggling with referrals in our landscape company because workers are intimidated about overtime being cut. I think the biggest thing there is, you can always encourage people to refer people that they want to work with. Even if there might be some issues of overtime pay, one thing that I would, recommend here is just encouraging people that, every employee benefits if we are fully staffed and we have people that we enjoy working with. No one wants to get that last minute call saying that someone didn't show up for work. And being able to refer, good quality employees is a good way to address that. And then maybe find other ways to reward them, maybe by offering a referral bonus to encourage them if they are concerned about that, especially if it's harder to get people in the door right now. Those are just a couple of options for you. If you are using Employ Us, where can you get your QR code? That's a great question. If you're in Employ Us, you can go to the Messages tab, and then under Links, you can create your own link and download that QR code. Here, I'm just going to go back to a page here. This is the Messages tab. So you're going to go here to Messages and then click on Links. And then if you hover over any of these links, you can download a QR code that is associated with that. If you'd like to turn that into a flyer, feel free to contact support, and we've got a flyer template creator that we can send your way to. Got one more question here from Jeffrey. If you've got anything else, feel free to drop it in the chat. We'll keep this going as long as y'all have got questions here. Jeffrey asked, how much do you recommend we pay for employees for a specific referral bonus fee? Jeffrey, that's a great question. We did cover that in an earlier webinar. It really depends on what type of employees you're trying to recruit for. If you want to comment what type of jobs these are, I'd be more than happy to give you a more specific recommendation. What we often see is that for full-time or salaried roles, those amounts typically range between $1,000 to $3,000. For hourly roles or for part-time roles, those amounts can range anywhere between $50 to a couple $100. That's the biggest difference there. What you really want to look at though is how long do people have to work? I've seen some companies, they would much rather give a $25 gift card just for getting someone hired who shows up for work. And other companies that would much rather pay out a larger amount, but only after someone has already worked, 80 hours, 100 hours, whatever that might look like. It looks like for you, you've got a lot of caregivers. So what I've seen a lot of companies in the healthcare space do is just look at what the bill rates are and determine what's an appropriate amount of money where you want someone to stay employed for, a certain minimum amount of time, and then set a bonus that would be appropriate for whatever the billings are associated with that position. So if you've got a caregiver where you have potentially a break-even point after 40 hours, you might not want to offer a referral bonus until they reach 80 or 160 hours, and then give out a bonus that's a portion of whatever is associated with that role. The good thing for that is it's usually something where you only pay if it actually works out. So whereas you might have a job board posting where you spend a bunch of money and then those candidates either don't work out or the hires terminate early, with a referral bonus you only pay it if it works out. And for that, I really just recommend setting a number of hours worked in healthcare that's appropriate for you all, and try to stick in a range of if it's a specialty caregiver, a few $100. If it's RNs, those types, I've seen those in the low thousands as well. Got a question as well for how we can view the past webinars. Again, there will be a link sent out to all of the attendees that'll have all of the webinars as well. You can also access them if you go to Hireology's website as well, hireology.com. Thank you all so much for all of the great questions. Like I said, this is our last webinar of the year here for our quick hit webinar series on employee referrals. I know I've seen a lot of y'all's names consistently over the past few months. So thank you so much for tuning in, every other week and learning more about how you can build a great referral program. I really appreciate it. I just got a note from Nosley. Thank you so much. Appreciate having you on these as well. If anyone's got any last minute questions, feel free to post them in. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and wrap up. And I hope everyone has a wonderful holiday season. Hopefully this, for some of y'all, is one of the last things on your docket before you get to take some well-deserved PTO. I'm going to go ahead and looks like we don't have any more questions coming in here. So we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Appreciate you for sticking around and listening in here. Again, if you need any more information, you can always go to hireology.com/employ us. And you can look at the webinars there as well. Thank you all so much. Have a great rest of the year.